Hello, this is Michael Hexter, and welcome to Politics 2100 here on YouTube. So, this episode I'm calling Israeli Government and Hamas Strategies of Lying Designed to Undermine Peace and War Crimes Prosecution. So, I've established, I think, at least, in broad terms in the last few episodes, that Hamas and Israel, and this has also been shown to be a mutually beneficial relationship between the Likud governments and Hamas, even to the point of distant collaboration via Qatar. They're reinforced beside the actual documented support for Hamas from the Netanyahu government and so forth and so on, that they also, in the here and now, even as they're declaring each other their mortal enemies and fighting each other, that they both support each other, not necessarily, again, in the exact intention by doing this, but the lying that they both engage in on a regular basis, and also the support for that lying from people who are supporters of either one side or the other, the looking away from lying is part of the strategy. So it's part of the strategy of, as I was describing in the last video, encouraging apocalyptic nihilism, or in the previous videos, a cycle of hatred and vengeance that drives military solutions to political problems. Military, not solutions, non-solutions, but military attempts at solutions to political, juridical problems, okay, and of the combined people of the Levant, the Jews, Palestinians, other groups in that area. And so the lying, so I'm going to use one instance, though you could find any number of different instances. It's so profuse in a way. The lying is so profuse on both sides, though the Israeli government is, because it's a bigger military, police military combined than Hamas, there are more fronts to look at for that lying and for that subterfuge, that undermining of reality and of looking at reality. And there are people who support both sides. In other words, there are people on one side that support their governments or their militants lying, or their, I guess you could say, quasi-government in the Gaza for Hamas. So they support them so that it becomes the lying, the symmetry of the lying keeps on supporting each other. But what it does is it undermines this common basis of facts that we need to create peace, a lasting peace, also to adjudicate war crimes. So, and which is something that's very threatening. Now, it's not only just threatening to Israel and to Hamas, it's threatening to many, many national governments. So, in other words, and especially the United States. The United States doesn't support the International Criminal Court, and they've been undermining international law, and they stand by Israel as being a ally in undermining international law. The United States does. So it requires to solve this problem requires, in a way, a revolution in civil society throughout a number of societies, including the United States, to say we've had enough of lying about very important issues from governments, and we need to create a common basis of facts through international institutions like the UN, potentially. Again, the European Union, unfortunately, has not distinguished itself at all. In fact, has been a weapon against the Palestinians in the last several years, in particular, and particularly now, in supporting Palestinian genocide via essentially Israel as a proxy for that. So, anyway, so the people are wave off the lying of their side, and they say, well, no, it's the other side that's lying. So I'm seeing lots of reports from people who I semi-trust, okay, who are somewhat trustworthy. Again, people talk about the quote-unquote fog of war, so forth and so on. And also, just sort of to put a parentheses, we also see attacks on journalists. Attacking journalists is part of the commitment to a strategy of lying. Okay, a strategy of lying is inimical to the peaceful resolution of differences and the demilitarization of conflicts. And so lying is now, obviously, when in wars, governments sort of give themselves the pass on lying, and they produce all kinds of propaganda. But journalists are supposed to be there to hold the governments to somewhat to account, and it varies the degree to which they hold them to account. Okay, there's not a perfect example of perfect journalistic integrity, in any given regime, let's say. There are certainly journalists who are heroic and are trying to report the truth, and that's their job, and they're often interfered with, and in the case of in Israel, killed often by Israelis, not Israeli military. So, but anyway, just the incident that I want to talk about, which is very critical right now, is there was a command from the Israeli government for people in northern Gaza to flee to southern Gaza and potentially to Egypt. Then within 24 hours. So this is a ridiculous request. There's a number of reasons why it's a violation of human rights, collective punishment, land theft, potentially another Nakba, so major land theft, what's called ethnic cleansing. I hate the word. It suggests that one ethnicity is clean, the other is dirty, or somehow if you only have one ethnicity in one plot of land, it's a clean situation. So I would say, land theft, eliminationism. But anyway, so this command, there's an incident, and I'll put some links in the description box, where it's been asserted by Palestinian advocates and by people who are favorable to, if they don't say they're pro-Hamas, but they're anti-Israel, they claim to be for Palestinian liberation, so forth and so on, who say, so there was an attack, so there was a convoy of cars going down a road in Gaza to the south, and you see a video of an explosion occurring on the road. And there are differing accounts as to whether this explosion is from Hamas or whether it's from an Israeli airstrike. So I don't trust either the Israeli government or Hamas in this. And furthermore, I don't trust journalistic, or let's say there's such a polarization in terms of facts, that there are people who've already sort of created one side is evil, all evil, and one side is all good or mostly good or whatever it is, or good enough, but really it's just all good and all evil. So actually it's something called splitting. I'll probably have to do another video about that one. It's a psychological concept. But anyway, this you see a video which it doesn't appear to be a bomb from above. It looks like an explosion on the ground, from somewhere on ground level. So, but anyway, but the assertion is that this is Israel having told Palestinians or Gazans to flee to the south. It's them bombing these convoys. So an act of enormous evil, okay, and also just lying, in terms of telling Gazans that they'll be safe if they flee, and then attacking them. Following orders, then creating a catch-22 situation. So the other narrative, though, is that, well, no, Hamas doesn't want Gazans to leave and wants them to act as human shields against the Israeli likely or probable ground invasion of northern Gaza, or from the north into Gaza. So they might have created done this attack on the Gazans fleeing. So there are people who are so filled with Zionist or Hasbara, or whatever, or propaganda, you could say pro-Israeli military propaganda is probably the best way to put it, that they would immediately dismiss this idea that it was the Israel. Oh, of course, no, Israel is just and fair, and it's always doing the right thing, and it's much better than Hamas, and we're the quote unquote democracy, so forth and so on. Meanwhile, dragging the concept of democracy in the dirt. Also the liberal world order, many Western governments also dragging that in the dirt, dragging those ideals in the dirt, which are not bad ideals. Okay, so there's some people who say, foo with those ideals, that's terrible, that's part of imperialism, I don't want to deal with that. I think that that's a political mistake, an enormous political mistake that is born of, in part, a long tradition on the left of anti-liberalism as only pure hypocrisy, and not, in fact, the terrain of struggle, which actual people fighting for rights and for the better, and for human liberation on the ground, in at least certainly in civil society, and in also even in labor militancy, a whole bunch of places, they actually are working in that terrain. They're not saying that all that is bullshit, I hate it. So anyway, that's a side note. That's another discourse. But anyway, the lying part and the trust about information here is highlighted. It's like, well, who do you believe? Which is your favorite narrative? What's your preferred narrative? Is it Israeli perfidy? Is it Hamas perfidy? Is it Hamas victimization of the residents of Gaza and of Palestinians? So, I'm not here to make a definitive declaration about it. I'm not someone who can analyze video. There are people who claim to analyze video who say it's definitely one and not the other. But it highlights, if I have to, or if people have to go burrowing in and doing this kind of skullduggery to figure out whether something is true or not, that is a huge problem already, and it's beyond the leisure and the resources that almost everybody of almost everybody. In other words, we don't have ordinary people, especially living in a place that's being bombed, like Gaza, or even in Israel, where there's this, though they have and sometimes a very some very fine journalism going on and commentary going on within Israel. There's also propaganda and so on that's going on. Actually, it's more in the case of the side of supporting the Israeli government. The more of the propaganda is in outside of Israel, in a way, in Europe and in the United States, where it's hard to penetrate. And there are people who, in response, to say, well, it's the fact that you're flummoxed means that you're just on the wrong side. On our side, it's all clear. All of the reality is clear. It's like, well, I have reason. I also was watching a video put out by Hamas where they said, Hamas doesn't target civilians at all. And that was clearly a lie. Okay. I mean, they said don't. And well, and I've seen a video of the apparently a body cam of a Hamas fighter documented in a way. So speaking literally with forked tongue, or whatever you want to call it, but speaking with two voices. One says we don't target civilians. Another one is documenting shooting into porta potties at this music festival, literally shooting each, you see the guy raise his gun and shoot it at each porta potty. Okay. That's not a military target at a music festival. So anyway, the strategy of lying on both sides, and even if you feel a kinship relationship to one side or the other, you should be upset by the lying. You shouldn't be supporting the lying. There are people who I follow on Twitter who are Palestinian, who are on the ground, so forth and so on, and when they're talking about a particular incident that it's very clear that it's well documented, it's within my understanding, so I will repost it or retweet that because I know that. But there are other times where they are editorializing and creating a black and white narrative, even though I think Israel, because of its the advantages that have accrued to it over the years in terms of being allied with the major powers in the world, and also being supported by them, and being allied with Europe, and against the Arab-dominated Middle East, so forth and so on, and therefore, being much and having much more power to create atrocities and to kill and so forth and so on. It's not 100%. It's not all 100%. Okay, and so any idea, any way that you can establish yourself as a truthful voice, and there are people, I see people who are complaining, young people, some of them who are justice minded, and they see in general that the Palestinians are definitely much worse off than the Israelis, and Israelis are oppressing them and their boot is on their neck. They still don't want to say it's not just entirely black and white. There's a little shade of gray there somewhere. And that's either you want to be believed or you don't. Either you want to, are you recruiting for a religion, or are you trying to create a rational discourse that where peoples of different point of views can then find themselves and create a shared conviviality, okay, and where things are not in, where you can't share where the facts are unclear and so forth and so on, to adjudicate using fair civil proceedings or criminal proceedings about certain acts or certain pieces of land, so forth and so on, certain resources. And that requires a belief in that kind of shared reality, and a belief in the truth, and a belief and a commitment to it, and a commitment even if it's uncomfortable. Even if it's and it's like, and sorry if someone comes at me and says, well, you have the comfort of not being here where everything is so polarized. Well, maybe I can use my privilege. I mean, I can't cast off whatever privileges I've gained. I'm using the only rational, to have a privilege, the only rational attitude to have it is to use it. Okay, not to flaunt. I'm not flaunting it. I'm just saying these are realities that the world needs to come, and mostly to the aid of the Palestinians. But we need to understand the reality in order for us to really come to the aid of the Palestinians. Because right now, okay, the Israelis need there needs to be some protection for Israelis, definitely. But the aid, we really need to be coming right now because of the balance of forces, military, economic, geopolitical. The aid needs to, and to do that, we need to have people 100% truthing, or trying to truth 100%. And journalism could help that, and it's also under attack. Journalists are under attack in Israel-Palestine. Anyway, I'm going to stop here. Please share your reactions and thoughts in the comments below. Please like the video if you got anything out of it. And please subscribe to Politics 2100. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video.